Hi, I'm Gavin,
I'm Oscar.
and welcome back to the Sound Project. We're going to do another case study today, and this one is Tim Henson's studio, and it is in kind of the Dallas area is where he lives, and we were brought in on this project by All Pro Integrated Systems. So Joe Milne from All Pro and Sweetwater got us involved and mentioned that Tim Henson from Polyphia was doing this studio, and obviously Tim is a massive talent. He's pretty young guy, but he's also held in such high regard as far as his guitar skills at such a young age. And he wanted to build this studio on the second floor of his house and wanted a control room and a live room. And in that process, working with All Pro and Sweetwater, we also were introduced for the first time to Jason Goodwin from JGW Services. And now we've worked with Jason on multiple projects, and he's just a great contractor that can carry out our vision. So it was great to work with all those companies. Originally, when Joe got me involved, he sent over a SketchUp file that he had created of one possible layout for the room. And it was just one big open space there on the second level of his home, and we needed to divide it up into these two rooms. And kind of on the left side of this diagram there would be the street-facing side of the house, and then we just had to figure out how to arrange it. And this initial concept had a window between the two and the mixed position facing that window. And we ended up making some changes to that only because there was some symmetry issues with it. And then also you'd have to be sitting a little off center in the room to make room for that door to be able to get into the live room. So this next diagram here is a diagram that we came up with to show the size of the control room, the shape, the angles that we created. We also created this little alcove in the live room for like music stands and things like that, but it allowed us to keep symmetry in that control room. And I know you were heavily involved in this project as well, kind of throughout.
Yeah, and it was a cool one where the general building blocks of a control room and a drum isolation booth were there, but we just made a few small tweaks to it to get some proper angling on the walls. I think we also made a small adjustment to the positioning of the wall between the ISO booth and the control room to get a better room ratio as well.
Yep.
And then having that, I liked the deep bass trap that we have behind the diffuser directly behind directly behind the listening position as well. And then one thing that we always say is studios never have enough storage.
Yep.
And so when we were making this angling of the walls, there was kind of this extra uncomfortable sliver in the drum room, but it actually makes for a nice spot to place, mic stands, some extra equipment, things like that.
For sure. And it also gave, with the way that we angled the back walls, it gave us some additional space at the top of the stairs, because you walk up the top of his stairs there, and it's just, if you left that wall flat, it would just be really kind of closed off, and you might feel a little claustrophobic going up there. So it just made it feel a lot more natural doing it that way.
Yeah.
So this is some photos of what it looked like before. Like, again, that's the street-facing side of the house, and there's 3 windows there, which we ended up just blocking off and building within it, because those windows were a weak point in isolation. And that live room was going to be used mostly for drums, and that is obviously a difficult instrument to contain, and we didn't want to disturb neighbors, because it is a neighborhood with houses fairly close to him.
Yeah, and the angled portion of the ceiling, I remember, was a fun thing that kind of ends up getting disguised in the last design, in our design, where we have the soffit bass trap going around the perimeter of the room. And so in some certain areas, there's that slope in the ceiling in the corners, but the bass trap, actually, the soffit traps comes off of the angle, so it kind of gets hidden above that. Yeah,
absolutely. We've got some more photos here, again, seeing kind of those angled ceilings there. This is the looking back towards the back of the room, which is where the entrance, you actually can see the stairs a little bit there on the right-hand side of where you walk up. And then one of the first things that needed to be done was a floated floor, because again, in the ISO booth, you've got drums that are going to vibrate that floor. This is on the second level of his house, and that's always a challenge in studios being built on the second level, like somewhere above the slab grade, is that once the energy gets into the structure of the house, it can just travel anywhere at once. And so making sure that we isolated it. And this is kind of a fun progression of photos because this is framing things out. And you can see there's some wood shims underneath it because it's not hasn't been isolated yet. The next picture shows some joist tape that gets added to the top of the floors there to help with additional isolation. And then below it, now you can see those black squares. Those are U-shaped pucks that go on the underside of the floor and help to decouple it from the floor itself. And then the final photo here is starting to get some of the decking in place. And then at the very end, we've got some mass-loaded vinyl that got added, and then it was completely finished.
Yeah, and the cool thing to notice with the floating floor as well is that it gives, it separates the studio from the house space, but then it also helps separate the isolation booth from the control room. So you can see that the flooring for the isolation room was put in first, and then it's actually on a separate floating floor than the control room. And so then it gives a lot of extra isolation between the spaces as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I think actually in this space, we ended up not floating the control room. Like we wanted some additional height in the control room. So there is just a slight step up to get into the ISO booth, but we focused on just the ISO booth because that was where most of the vibrations were happening. But yeah, it was great to start there. And then notice now that the new walls are being framed, and those are actually being framed on top of the floated floor. And so we there's no reason to have to isolate the wall because it's already on top of the floated floor. And so those started to get framed up. We've got, again, a few other details here of some framing. This is the first time I'd ever seen one of those little tents for a cutting saw like that to contain all the dust. But it's a way to keep a little bit more of a clean work environment. But you can see Jason also put up clear plastic so it didn't get into the rest of the house. So there's just a lot of framework that has to be done. It then got filled in with mineral fiber insulation, making sure you don't have hollow cavities in the wall that could transmit that sound through. But there you can see the ISO booth really taking shape there, and seeing what the sight lines might be from the control room into the live room. So then things get drywalled after that and isolated, and then the rooms sound terrible, and we have to make them sound better. So they're well isolated, but need some help on the acoustical treatment. And one of the things we talk about all the time is how we have people send us inspiration shots of what they want their studio to look like. And Tim sent us one photo, and it's this one right here. And it was a picture of a living room it's not his living room, I don't believe. It's just a space that he liked. And he's like, if I could have this type of vibe for my studio, that's what I want. So you were tasked with then making that a reality. Yeah,
and so this was a really cool kind of look. At very stark. He wanted to have kind of like this black and white feeling to it. And so he loved the wood slat pattern on the front wall, and he really wanted to emulate that on our front wall. And so we ended up we did a stretch fabric system where it's faced with 4 to 6 inches of insulation on the front wall, and then we had a wood slat pattern in front to it still provides a lot of low frequency control, which you're going for to help control low frequencies in the room. But then the wood slats on top, they provide some reflection to make it a bit more reflective in mid and high frequencies, but then they also just look right. They have the right aesthetic look as well. And we were able to work in bass trapping as well on the front wall, and then use some off-the-shelf panels on the side walls to kind of emulate the look as well.
Yeah, and the wood slats on the front wall, nice thing about that too is when you're discussing a mix with someone, a lot of times you're facing forward, you're listening to the music, and it's kind of nice to not just have a complete like speaking into the void moment where it's just like fabric bass trapping and you get nothing in return from that front wall. So it just makes the room feel more natural. And the low end information that radiates omnidirectionally out of the speakers, it still sees that as just a big bass trap, but our higher frequencies from our voice, it makes it feel more natural and stuff that we're kind of used to. Right. So, yeah. So that was the image that we were given. And then you created these renderings of the space. And I think you nailed it as far as the vibe. I remember Tim reacting to the first ones. He was just like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going for. So, and we worked closely with Jason Goodwin on this to build most of the treatments, like the ceiling cloud, the soffit trap around the perimeter, that front wall treatment as well. And he even built the sidewall panels too. Like he ended up building those too. And this is kind of early renderings that we sent over to him, a few different angles there. We kind of put some placeholders in there as far as speakers are concerned. And he did have that output desk, so we put that in the renderings. And yeah, just a really clean, consistent looking space that Tim loved. He loved the look of it. You see a couch in the background there. We've got looking into the live room this direction. This is actually, like, this angle is what a lot of people see of his studio because he does so many YouTube videos, and it's usually a camera on his desk that's facing the back wall there, and you can see that diffuser and those wall panels there. And then the ISO booth here, we've got some panels here, just with more of a dark look for the panels in this room. And yeah, just it turned out really great. This is a photo of the room when it was finished. I love some of the touches he added when it comes to like the white trees that are in the front there. Yeah. And he originally had a set of black Genelecs in there, but then Genelec saw the room and thought that the white would pop a lot more, so he ended up switching them out with the white ones. And yeah, it's just I've been to this space I think one time, and it's just a super comfortable, great listening environment. But then also he doesn't disturb his neighbors. Like, they've had Polyphia rehearsals in this space and can do that at any time of night.
Yeah, Jason from JGW did a really good job on kind of nailing the look and getting it looking just right. Yeah. And like you said, he custom built all of the treatment in there.
Yeah,
and so yeah, he really, those renderings are a cool way of kind of giving the contractor a keystone to be working to emulate, and he nailed it.
Yeah, and on this project we were involved in. We did most of what we typically do, but we didn't do full drawing sets like we do on other jobs. And so the renderings were a big part of being able to make it a reality, and something that Jason could just call us and ask questions as we go. But there you see like that back bass trap with the inset diffusers. Yeah, it looks a lot like the renderings that you created. And the output desk and the side desk looks the same. Just a really, really nice space. The ISO booth is big enough for a drum set. And one thing it'd be good to watch is, if you haven't seen it already, if you are a Tim Henson fan, like, he's got a YouTube channel and he did a studio tour of his space, and there's a really nice walkthrough of everything. It's actually funny because you see me in it for about 2.5 seconds. And we filmed probably 5 to 10 minutes of me and him talking about the design and how we worked through different things for the video. And I remember when I flew back home, I got a text from Tim that said, "You're going to kill me, but my audio was off. Like, I have zero audio for this." But he did shout us out in the video, and it was really nice to be a part of that. But the other thing, when I did go back and visit Tim, he was really gracious to show us around, and that's Jason Goodwin on the right, Joe Milne from All Pro Sweetwater Integration on the left, and then there's Tim. And then I don't know, I've been thinking about it. Maybe you can help me. Should I get neck tattoos? Like, could I pull that off? Or?
I think you could rock it. You gotta get the whole arm sleeves.
Oh,
as well.
I have to do both?
Yeah, you have to do both.
I probably will pass them.
Okay.
Yeah. If it was just neck tattoos, I'd probably do it. But no, Tim's awesome. Like, he also, when Polyphia came through town, he got the whole staff tickets to go see him play, and just like uber talented. It's cool to see what he's doing with his career.
Yeah, and it's with how much content he puts online. Like, he loves just putting videos and jamming along with different songs or doing guitar covers, and he's always in the studio, and it's such a cool thing to see him, somebody creating such amazing music in our in a space that we help design.
Yeah, it's really great. Well, that's been another episode of the S.O.U.N.D Project. Really appreciate you being a part of it, and I'm curious, if you're a fan of Tim and Polyphia, what's your favorite Polyphia song? If you could comment that below, that'd be great, and we'll see you next week.